And if you follow me, then you know that I've been trying to get to Arizona for a while. So why not start out with talking to Mark Finchem, who was the nominee for the Secretary of State of the state of Arizona.
Here we go. And welcome back to Conservatives Talk. My name is Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we'd like to take a moment to make sure that we remind our viewers to make sure you're hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content that you run across any of the platforms that we release our content on, as well as making sure you're hitting that subscribe button. You can't take your orders from your overlords unless you know exactly who they are and how they are being put out. And you can only do that by hitting subscribe, so you will be informed when we do release anything. We also like to encourage our subjects to go to conservativestalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner and the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to, because our kingdom needs to be funded by your money.
I'm done. Done.
So, Jamie, after all of that,
I don't even know what to say.
Would you like to give your first reminder?
Boycott hometown headlines. We are continuing to remove liberal news out of Northwest Georgia, and it starts with you boycotting hometown headlines. And it's now more important than ever.
Absolutely. So we also like to take a quick moment to recognize our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So you can find Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net. It is an online compilation of localized newscast producers who really have firsthand knowledge of what is going on in their local area. So if you are wanting to find out what's going on across the United States from a firsthand perspective, make sure you are checking out Net News Network. We also want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First. So it is the premier America First policy organization. So make sure you are looking for Veterans for America First. We also like to say a quick thank you to their media arm, and that is Vet Voice. So make sure you're looking for Vet Voice when you are wanting to find America First policy content producers. And you can find Vet Voice on every major social media platform. So, Jamie, how about let's jump right into it?
Let's jump into it. And like we had mentioned before in the intro, we're bringing on our friend Mark Finchem. So, Mark, please join us.
Hi,
can you hear us, sir?
I can. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. So we want to start off. We kind of gave a little introduction for you during our intro for the show. We really want to ask a kind of a burning question that I know a lot of people here in Northwest Georgia, because like with Arizona, there have been some major election integrity questions that have gone on with this, or gone on for the past two election cycles. Can you tell us what exactly happened on Election Day in 2022?
Yeah, I'm dying to know.
Well, every tool in the toolkit of election cheaters was brought out and brought to play. So we've got right now somewhere between 390,000 and 500,000 ballots that are in question. Wow. We're challenging them because of the lack of chain of custody, and Arizona statutes are very clear that there has to be a chain of custody. And when there isn't, they are votes outside of the law. So let's just start with that one.
Yeah.
Then we've also got on Election Day, we had a lot of Republican voters that showed up at polling places, and because of the poor management, they said the machines are operating just fine, the ballots are printing just fine. Well, they were up until Election Day. Then on Election Day, suddenly we have 19-inch ballots show up where they were supposed to be 20-inch. Yeah, and they have to be hand adjudicated. They're also easy to spot in the population if somebody were to say, perhaps want to swap out ballots. There's a problem. And the fact that this happened overwhelmingly in predominantly Republican voting areas, which this is just unbelievable to me. We allegedly have a Republican recorder, Stephen Richer, a Republican-dominated board of supervisors. 4 of the 5 are Republicans. Yet we have this sick interference with Republicans at the polls. Now, in Kari Lake's case, we caught the county officials perjuring themselves. We caught them admitting to violations of law. In my own case, we now have evidence that shows just rampant cheating. So the Maricopa County election for 2022 is a steaming garbage heap. And Kari Lake's case is now in front of the, it got remanded by the Supreme Court back to the trial judge. And Maricopa County is supposed to provide the mail-in ballot affidavit envelopes.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're going to find this totally hysterical. See if you can follow this logic.
All right, let's hear it.
The county recorder, Stephen Richer, and the chairman of the board of supervisors, Bill Gates, not to be confused with Microsoft Bill Gates.
I was kind of worried.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're
like,
already
irony.
starting off in a great
Yeah,
path here.
we call him Little Bill Gates. He's smaller. They came out with a statement a couple of days ago after the court ordered them to produce those envelopes. Well, we don't want to do that because we don't think it's in the best interest of the state. What?
In the best interest of the state to release
So
facts.
you don't think that transparency in an election that is in controversy is not in the best interest of the state? What kind of gaslighting BS is that?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of crap that we're facing.
Well, that's the thing too. Yeah, if it's court ordered, then they have to release it. It doesn't matter if it's in the best interest of the state.
Or at least in their opinion, the best interest of the state.
Which is also valid.
It's still, it's a court order.
Well, like they say, opinions are like noses. Just about everybody has one.
Well, I appreciate you referencing a different body part from what that's saying.
Yeah, I tried to clean it up a little bit. Yeah. So in my own case, my case was dismissed because the judge, she got a little too busy talking as opposed to listening, and we were unable to get all of our claims in front of the court in time for the hearing, and then didn't allow us to put all of our evidence into place. And then comes back and says, well, we're going to issue sanctions because you brought this case in bad faith. Well, how would you know it was in bad faith if you didn't listen to the evidence? You don't get to have it both ways. So we have now filed a motion for reconsideration. So my case is back in front of the judge. We don't really expect her to go too far with remanding or with reversing herself. And then, of course, we've got Abe Hamaday, who it looks like Abe actually might have won with counting all the provisional ballots. So we're waiting to hear about that. And then, of course, we've got one other case that was filed about almost a year ago. Kari Lake and I filed a case in U.S. District Court here in Arizona to ban the use of ballot tabulation equipment, namely ES&S and Dominion. Because, first of all, they don't pass DOD critical infrastructure tests, and they are indeed open to hacking. That's been proven time and time again, even though the claims were made that, oh, no, they're secure. And then, of course, we've got the most recent disclosure by Eric Comer. Our SHIT is filled with bugs. He was talking about their computers, not something else. So, I mean, all of these things that are coming into play, the people of Arizona know that this election was a travesty. They know that it was stolen. And when my judge says, well, you lost by 120,000 votes, really? Prove it. It's up to the county to prove to us that the election was fair and secure. It's not up to us to prove that it wasn't. And that seems to be something that the court, and at least in my case, that the court has forgotten. So that's pretty much the briefing on what's going on in litigation world here. Do I think that there are people who might end up going to jail? Gosh, I hope so, because in one of our affidavits, a gentleman said this was purposeful. This didn't happen. This isn't happenstance. This wasn't an accident. This was purposeful. when we talk about the 19-inch ballot images versus the legal 20-inch ballot images. And
Yeah.
we know, of course, that there's a ton of cartel money that's floating around in all over the state.
I just don't
and
see
some political
how.
offices.
I just don't see how the thought or the notion that an entire inch off of a ballot can be viewed as just
I mean,
being something that would go beyond noticing.
yeah, that's very noticeable. I mean, like it's
Right.
Everyone's going to notice it, especially when you compare it to other ballots when they're all in a pile. And even if they were to count, they were to count them, you're going to look at them, and you're going to be like, wait a minute, why are all these shorter than these?
Yeah. What's the first thing that you do when you get a stack of papers? You take them and you stick, or you smack them against the desktop to get them all lined up. So I mean, that in and of itself would be.
They're all 20-inch paper.
Okay. All right. I got you now.
19-inch images versus the 20-inch images.
I got you.
And our expert witness, who for 50 years printed ballots for Maricopa County, by the way, came in and said, there's only two ways this can happen. One is if it was created by somebody and saved as a PDF file image for deployment on election day, or if somebody externally hacked in and altered the image. There's only two ways that can happen. So they're going to have to fess up on this one. Somebody on the inside created that image and deployed it on election day.
It's just interesting too that they add the statement of, it's not in the best interest of the state. That's where the confusion really comes in for me. Because that just shows that you're hiding something, or there's more to the story that you're not willing to tell.
Because the best interest of the state,
exactly,
the best interest of the state is absolute transparency.
Right.
I mean, there is no other interest of the state other than the trust of the people that they are supposed to be there representing.
And what they're proving here is the system is not secure.
Yeah, I mean, that was the big thing for me was, as election day rolled on, we were all paying attention across the country, right? But to see the number of scanning issues, ballot issues, everything across the board just in Arizona alone.
Well, I mean, you had issues here in Georgia with it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, we had issues in Georgia with it, but not to the magnitude that they did.
Oh, no.
Which is what was even more frightening that we know of.
Yes, well, that's true. Well, I know we had issues with some of the ballots not being printed to where the scanner could read them, or not being printed dark enough, if I'm not mistaken, to where
they could go into, like, once it printed out off the card, they had to go into the thing, and the machine would spit it back out. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't take the ballot
because it wasn't dark enough to be able to read it.
Grayscale instead of black. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had several reports of that throughout Northwest Georgia going on.
But that's what I mean, though. I mean, like, because while we were hearing about it, like, I mean, they were in the thousands.
Oh, yes.
Like, early.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the shift from that to where, like, think about how many people just didn't even come out because they just started hearing all over the news because it was immediately reported that so many people in Arizona were having this issue.
And the elections were already called into question from the 2022 or the 2020 election cycle. And I mean, people already had a lot of mistrust in that. So when you start hearing those news reports coming out, if I was even slightly on the fence about going out and voting at that point in time, my mind would go, why bother?
Yeah.
Well, then we had to that long lines, people having to wait in line for 3-4 hours, and finally getting so discouraged that they just threw their hands up and went home. That's tens of thousands of people who were disenfranchised just by that.
Well, see, because that's the other thing that shocked me too, is Arizona has such large counties, but like fewer polling stations in those counties. Well, in comparative, like per capita.
Well, I would also say that if I'm not mistaken, Maricopa County has almost 80% of the population of Arizona, or roughly around about that.
Well, it's I'm told between 61 and 63%, depending on the numbers you use. But still, we're talking about
a vast majority.
Two-thirds
of the state.
We call it the great state of Maricopa. It's not really the great state of Arizona.
My great aunt lived there, and she's always said that she's always had issues going and voting in that in that county.
Yeah, it's a hot mess.
Well, I will say, although on a smaller scale, what was it in 2020? our county where we live here in Georgia actually lost 3,000 ballots and then mysteriously found them when they were ordered with the hand recounts. Yeah. So yeah, we are not without our own flaws when it comes to a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
So one of the other things that I wanted to that I kind of wanted to touch on with you is I know because of what you've experienced with this and what you've gone through with all of this, you've really taken a forefront and a lead on the issue with involving election integrity. Mm-hmm. Where or what measures do you see that could be applied across every state in the nation to really ensure that our elections are actually secured?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a Six Sigma guy. I don't know if you won't know what that is, but Six Sigma is a study of process, identify defects that negatively impact the process, negatively impact the customer experience. And in this case, the customer is who? The voters. Elections belong to the people. They don't belong to the government bureaucracy. As much as the government bureaucracy would like to own it, they don't. It belongs to the people. Mm-hmm. So, and every state is a little bit different. No state runs elections. All the elections are run by counties. But the legislatures in those states, every one of the states, choose the time, place, and manner for elections. All right. Mm-hmm. Now that we've got the fundamental nomenclature down, I'm heading right now an organization called the Election Fairness Institute. And if people want to go see what we're about, they can go to goefi.org. That's go, as in not stop, but go. EFI.org. It's 501c3. And we're engaged in examining the election process. Let's see if we can spot defects in the process. Here's a great example. In Maricopa County, we have arguably hundreds of thousands of mismatched ballot envelope affidavits. So when you do a ballot by mail, you have to sign the affidavit, put the ballot in, mail the ballot in, it gets open. Well, in a sample, a major sample, I think it was 12,000 of these ballot envelopes, we found a 15% error rate. Well, that is equal to about 400, 500,000 ballots where we have a signature mismatch or no signature at all, which is by definition in law, not a legal ballot.
It's been a while since I've taken statistics, but if I remember correctly, that would come up as statistically significant. By breaking that down.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, those are some of the defects in process that we're looking for. Mm-hmm. A defect in process is when election officials don't follow the law. Well, okay, if you're not going to follow the law, writing more laws doesn't really matter. Then we take a look at, for example,
it's a fair point.
Yeah.
Back in the Obama days, election systems were declared to be critical infrastructure. All right, if they're critical infrastructure, that means that they begin to fall under DoD standards for motherboards, for computer equipment. And if there are chips and components that are made by the Chinese Communist Party or the PLA or in Communist China, why would we want to have those on our elections equipment? Now, you probably have heard of the Koenig case. That thing is growing legs, where just terabytes of information about American voters and American vote officials is now in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. So I don't know about you, but I don't think that's very secure. And that's what
I would say not.
Institute is about looking at. So if people, like I say, if people want to visit goefi.org, we operate on donations. And right now is the time for us to be examining all of these processes and then doing white papers and reports to legislatures to say, hey, you have a gaping hole in your system. You might want to consider addressing it because right now the people are righteously indignant. And I think that's a polite way of saying just totally PO'd.
Yeah, I would say so. Again, here in Georgia, we had our state legislature did pass SB 202, but even still,
It had some gaps. Yeah, it's a great law. It had some gaps, and they even had to come back this legislative session to try to repair some of the gaps that were missed. And there's still some more work to be done. We had a big Dropbox issue here to where in 2020 to where they were just in random spots. And then we would have to fight to make sure that the chain of custody was in order. And then they came back and only said, okay, well, we'll allow certain drop boxes, but they have to be in secure governmental facilities and they're no longer going to be outside. So that was the start of a win, right? But the idea is that we don't want any more drop boxes.
Well, and I would say we can have all the drop boxes in the world that we want. We just need to get rid of the no excuse absentee ballots, or in all honesty, early voting altogether. One thing that I would say, and I would wholeheartedly welcome the federal government to come in on this part by hear me out. Hear me out.
No.
Hear me out. Declaring Election Day a national holiday.
Oh, okay.
So declaring Election Day a national holiday.
I can go with that.
And then allowing everybody the opportunity to go and vote on that one election day, and that's it.
Well, here's the system I've advocated for. And we have Martin Luther King holiday, the third Monday of January. How about we make voting day Martin Luther King Day? I mean, why honor the man for something that he fought for all of his life?
That's not a bad position on that.
I like that. And then we make it voting weekend. Starts at 7:00 in the morning on Friday. Excuse me. Goes through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That accommodates firefighters, police officers, hospital employees, critical infrastructure employees of all kinds, and all major faiths.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Okay. Well, and I think about that all the time, because one thing that I would tell people all the time, I was like, you can ask your employer to get off of work to go vote,
and they have to let you off.
And they have to let you off. Most people didn't realize that. They were like, well, I have to work, that's why I early vote. I was like, you can ask.
Right.
And I think that's the ignorance of people not knowing the process, which is what allows for all of this in the mainstream media to skew things so much, is because they're leaning on the ignorance of the public to believe them because they're on TV versus actually looking it up themselves.
But that opens up an entirely new can of worms, to where we go into how Americans don't actually know anything about civics.
Yeah, because they removed it in most schools, which is a whole nother problem.
That's exactly right. But you've just highlighted another defect, and that is polluted voter rolls. We have no idea how many fictitious voters there are in the voter rolls, because they've been polluted over so long. And most of them are open access on the internet. So how do you fix that? You go to, you're going to love this, opt-in absentee ballot for every last one. Now, quite frankly, I don't care about opening up the arguments for why you would need one. For me, it's like, I'm not going to be here on voting day. Okay, that's legitimate. The point is, you have to opt in order to get a ballot, and you have to sign an affidavit, which means you're providing now a new, fresh, wet signature in order to get the ballot. And a ballot's going to be mailed to, no forwarding allowed, mailed to a qualified residential address, not a business, not a P.O. box, unless, of course, you have a rural route. That's another process that's broken. That's low-hanging fruit that can be repaired fairly easily.
Without a doubt. We realized that in 2020. So I brought this up as well. My neighbor, I live in a condo that's more like a duplex. My neighbor moved from Georgia to California, but his name was on the list of people who voted in Georgia and absentee. So when we challenged the elector and we put everybody was on the list, we're like, there are people who we know for a fact do not live in Georgia, but voted absentee, and we believe it should be looked into. We don't want to say it doesn't want to count yet. We just said it should be looked into, and they refuse to hear it. And then on top of that, there's no cross-reference with the change of address inside of the postal system. So when you don't look at who's changed their address with the postal system or forward their mail to somewhere in another state versus who didn't change their voter registration because they hadn't got a license in another state yet. That's where we have a problem.
Right. And your Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, probably the worst Secretary of State in the whole U.S. And
I'll give you that one.
There's some competition for that title.
I'll give you that one. I absolutely no. So Jamie and I had discovered a couple of folks that we actually knew personally that had moved out of the state. And outside of what he was talking about, this would be after the election had taken place, that voted, that came from out of state, came back into Georgia to vote, and then left to go back home out of state, and then moved to an entirely another state and remained on the voter roll. We actually collected every bit of evidence that would be needed to even convict them beyond any shadow of a doubt. Found their residence, found their rental agreements for the past 8 years.
Found where he purchased a house. I mean, this individual tried to vote in the Democratic primary in Alabama, which is when he found out that he couldn't, but then drove 4.5 hours to Georgia to vote, early voting in his area. And when we notified it, I mean, we just went ahead and sent the information. They still haven't done anything about it.
Yeah, it's been 3 years now.
Yeah, they like the fact that there's fraud there that they can use. I don't trust elections officials anymore, quite frankly. After what I've seen and the amount of money, cartel money that's flowing through all of the various states, I'm just disgusted with what I see. Now, when you see a Secretary of State or some county officials that take somebody to task for that and prosecute, now you got some Boy Scouts. Now you got some security and integrity that you can work with. But like you fellas are saying, without holding people accountable to just follow the law, I mean, that's what I ran on.
Yep.
That's the one thing I ran on. Just follow the law. Well, they don't want to follow the law because then they're going to be found out that this is really a selection. It's not an election. It's a simulation. Pat the people on the head so that they think that they're actually electing somebody, and we'll tell them what the result is. Oh, hell no. No. That is not a secure and transparent system.
No, I wholeheartly agree with you with that. There's a saying that I use quite frequently that I got from another friend of mine. It is that the simulation is real.
The Matrix.
Exactly. So on the whole topic of elections, President Trump just showed up in court. We found out what the indictments were, but we also are expecting more of them to start coming out here in the next month to month and a half. One of them stemming from here in Georgia, involving 2020. What I would like to ask is, do you know anything about what's going on with that, and what are your thoughts on that as somebody who was running for the position that he would have had that phone call with?
Yeah. I don't know any specifics about the cases, so I won't comment on that. But I will tell you this: they have now crossed the Rubicon. He'll be prosecuted for treason because of what he and his son have done.
Yep.
Barack Obama should be prosecuted for treason for what they have done.
Yep.
These are individuals who have now weaponized the judicial system and the law enforcement system to take out political adversaries. I think that what they may have just done is seen to it that Donald Trump will be elected the next president. I don't think it was really smart to open this can of worms, but now that it's open, bring it.
I've been considering maybe running for a district attorney slot just to be able to.
I've been trying to be cautious about the entire thing, but I mean, just like here's what
I mean, now that they've unsealed what.
Correct. And here's what grinds my gears. First off, they lied, right? Because they said, oh, well, here's what it is for a misdemeanor. And then they get up there and they're like, oh, well, here are all these felonies that we're actually going to charge you with. First, that's the first part, right? Then you actually get into the fact of all of a sudden, after 200 plus years, this is the first president that they have chosen to prosecute.
Well, when it is your campaign platform, that's what you're going to do. He's run. So I'll give him this.
Marilyn Monroe lived in the White House.
I will give him
Marilyn Monroe lived in the White House.
I will give him this. Promises made, promises kept.
They just act like he's the only president or the only person to ever allegedly have done something when we have full-blown evidence of people who are actually currently doing something, previously doing something, and people who got caught in the middle of doing something but either got pardoned or like literally in the middle of the Oval Office. But no, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, so President Trump made one mistake. Well, one big one. He told the American people that it was time to give them their government back. And he said it openly in his inaugural address. And that scared the ever-living hell out of all the people that have been committing fraud for decades, who are sitting in seats of power illegitimately. He challenged the machine and all of the people that would want to tear him down. And that is why you are seeing this over-the-top bombastic BS. All this goes all the way back to the day he announced his first presidential run. They are in full Chernobyl meltdown mode because all of their fraud will be found out eventually. This is Satan's work, fellas.
Yeah.
This is Satan's work, and Donald Trump stepped on the battlefield with God. And Satan doesn't like to have to battle God.
Yeah, I will say that is I wholeheartedly agree with you in on that one. But it does also bring me to say that makes me all the more grateful for the Queen. So inside thing when we refer to the Queen,
he means our Congresswoman.
Yes, Congresswoman Marjorie Green. That's kind of that's kind of our code name for her is the Queen. She I'll probably have to deal with that one later. But
she's a little fighter, that one.
She's plucky.
I'm so glad she's our representative.
Oh yes. All right. So so in speaking over the past several minutes on this, one thing that you keep talking about, and it's something that I think is also of significant national importance with this, is the fact of the cartel money that is being involved within our states for every aspect of every state organization or anything along that line. And the fact that you are, quite frankly, in the literal heart of our mass illegal immigration or mass illegal invasion that's actually going on right now there in Arizona. Can you give us a little, can you tell us about what's going on with that?
Yeah.
Or have you yourself experienced anything or seen anything with that?
Yeah. Yes, because until recently I lived within 60 miles of the border, and the Sinaloa cartel has operational control of our border inside the United States. So Alejandro Mayorkas is nothing but a stone cold liar.
Oh yeah, that's
Joe Biden, a stone cold liar. We do not have a secure border. In fact, here's just one stat for you. 1,667 captured Chinese nationals. Military
age, through Mexico?
Fit men. Yeah. Think about that number. We only captured 10%. Think about that number.
Oh yeah.
The Chinese are coming through Mexico?
Yes.
Yes. $30,000 a pop. They're paying the cartels to make the border crossing.
Yep. And that's after that's before they even get to Mexico. I mean, that's after they actually get to Mexico. That's not including what they actually have to pay to leave China.
I'm kind of mind blown at the moment. Okay, continue, please.
So then we've also got the drugs, and we got child sex trafficking, and all of it on the hands of the cartel. The Sinaloa cartel is heartless, cold souls. They are the spawn of Satan, and I'm not kidding you. they would kill you just as soon as they look at you. If you got in the way of them making a dollar bill, you're a dead man. So they have hundreds of billions of dollars in cash that they've got to launder. Well, how are they going to do that? Well, there's all kinds of mechanisms for it. In fact, we've got quite a few investigations that are going on now around how do we identify the people who have received that kind of money? What's the process that they use to launder it? And what I've seen so far is nothing short of scary. We don't own our government anymore. The cartels do.
I mean, frankly, the one thing that comes to mind just in the political realm, super PACs.
Well, yeah, I mean,
super PACs don't have to delineate where
the money came from.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of depressing to me to see the amount of money that is at work here. And, when you've got all three branches of government and all stations of government, from municipal all the way up to the federal government, susceptible to, what is the root of all evil? The love of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Breaking the world, but it's true. People will sell their souls for $100,000 bill.
Well, especially when our commander-in-chief is their chief business partner in allowing a lot of this to go on because of his policies that are keeping our borders wide open and allowing these catch and releases to go on, even though the courts have said that was unconstitutional, essentially, and they still they're still continuing to do these and to really flood our.
Then you've got these clowns in New York, in the state of New York City, that they want to make sure that every illegal can vote. Well, what about people that are paying taxes who live there?
Yep.
How is it that is not disenfranchising somebody who's a legal citizen of this nation?
Who's worked hard to get to maintain themselves, to build a life, but yet their say-so in how the government's ran is diminished by someone who could have just come in here anytime at any point and changed the entire system.
And by the way, this is not a Democrat thing. I want to be really clear. This is a uniparty thing. This is Republicans and Democrats who hate this country, who want to join the New World Order, they can't wait to have digital currency so that they can tell you how to spend your money. Really?
I think he's been watching some of our shows.
Yep.
That's I've been doing this for 8 years now.
We've gone down the we've referred to it. We've actually made tinfoil hats just to mock the folks that would say that we are these conspiracy theorists that would be speaking about this. But I mean, quite frankly, it's all come true. Yeah. So, I mean, even the Babylon Bee has been shown to be at least 70% correct in everything they've been coming out, and that's supposed to be an entirely satire website.
Yep.
Yeah. I love paper. The other one I love? James O'Keefe just going right at the heart of the beast with OMG, O'Keefe Media Group.
Yep.
That is probably one of the funniest things I've heard all year. But for him to go knocking on some lady's door and say, "We understand that you've given $185,000 to Democrat Party. Is that true?" No, I gave them $5. Really? So yet another
interesting
process that the Election Fairness Institute wants to take a look at. We want to do some canvassing of these large dollar donors and ask them, did this really happen? Because that is election fraud. And whoever's reporting that, whoever has their fingers on that, they're committing a major felony.
I never thought about that, because you're right. I mean, someone could give like $5, but they could write it down differently and have somebody else put up the cash in someone else's name, and the person would never really know the difference.
That's right. That's exactly what happened. Their name got hijacked.
If I'm not mistaken, there has actually only ever been one person that has been prosecuted for having somebody else make a donation, and that's why am I drawing a blank on his name right now? The Indian guy. No, the Indian guy who does a lot of the movies. You know exactly who I'm talking about.
The Indian guy.
No, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He's the one that did the how Democrats have essentially turned this state or turned our
Dinesh
country
D'Souza.
in. Yes, Dinesh D'Souza.
Oh, okay.
The only man who's been prosecuted for that offense, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
When he had his assistant, or he made a campaign donation through his assistant's name.
Right.
Because he had maxed out.
Right.
So yeah, it's truly crazy.
Your justice system, fellas.
Hey, you know,
the uniparty, and it's the rest of us.
Well, I will say they have been telling us that this is how it was going to be at least since 2020 when
since 1992
when they came up with the phrase "the new norm."
Herbert Walker Bush got up there and he said, "This is."
Are you sure you want to talk about your?
I'm not. No, I said Herbert Walker Bush.
Oh, okay.
41 got up there and he said, "This is the new world order." Right at the end of the Cold War. You can go back and watch the tape.
Yeah,
said it from the Oval Office, and we.
Apparently, he didn't ask Russia and China about that here recently because obviously they would disagree with that.
Right.
Well, sir, I want to say thank you for coming on and joining us, and telling us about what's going on in your state and what you have experienced there, and really giving us an inside look into what election issues are still ongoing throughout the nation.
Yeah, people got to be involved, man. And
yes,
we got to get. I hate to use the DHS-ism, but if you see something, say something.
Mm-hmm.
You know, report it to your sheriff. Mm-hmm. Now, you may have a sheriff that's crooked as a dog's hind leg. Okay.
We got a good one.
What's important is you make that report, you get it in the record. Because one day we will all be held to account. We'll all be held to account for everything that we've done and not done. Folks need to run for school boards. We need to get civics back in the classroom. I fear that the Republic is already lost, but God has reserved a remnant to see to it that this nation will survive if the remnant will just step forward.
Amen.
So if folks want to help me, again, go efi.org. We want to be all over this like ugly on an ape.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you back one day soon.
All right.
We'll have to discuss more of this globalist digital currency issue that is jumping into our everyday lives.
A week to 10 days. It'll be all over you.
Well, again, sir, we appreciate you coming on, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon.
Thank you. Carry on.
So again, we want to say thank you to Mr. Finchem for coming on and giving us his experiences that he had during the 2022 election, as well as talking to Jamie and I a little bit about the immigration crisis that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I was thoroughly impressed with Mr. Finchem, and I'm glad he was able to come on to the show. It was a real honor to have him on the show, and I look forward to coming to Arizona. I'll call you when I get there.
So we do like to take a moment in every show to make sure that we are reminding our viewers to hit that like button, as well as share on any other platforms that you run across in the content that we release our content on, as well as reminding our viewers to hit the subscribe button on any of the platforms that we also release our content on. That way you can stay up to date on anything that Jamie and I produce and release out, so you can receive your subliminal messaging from us, and we can control your thoughts.
I'm ready to go back in the box.
We also want to say, our remind our viewers to make sure they're going to our website at conservativetalk.org and hitting that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to, because subliminal messaging is expensive, and Jamie and I are poor. We also want to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and our first one being Net News Network. So make sure you're checking out Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net. We also want to say thank you to Veterans for America First. You can find Veterans for America First at vfaf.org. We also want to say thank you to Vet Voice. So you can find Vet Voice on every major social media platform. So Jamie, with that, would you care to give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, so my final thought really kind of sums up everything that we've been talking about. It's time to get involved. It's time to make sure that if you haven't been involved now, it's more important than ever. if you've realized anything that's going on across the country this past week. It's really important to make sure that we are seen, heard, and we're
Our
active.
presence is felt.
You know what I mean? And we're active. You have to get out there. You have to get involved. And again, another way for you to get involved throughout the process, if you're in the state of Georgia, is through our district convention process. That will be on April 22nd across the state. And if you're in Northwest Georgia, especially, then we'll be at Tryon High School starting about 8:30 will be registration, and we'll kick off the convention around 9:30. So make sure that you're active and involved. Also, like we always remind you, if you are interested in running for office anywhere in the state of Georgia, in fact, anywhere in the country now, just give us a call when we can connect you with the right people.
Absolutely. And again, I do want to bring this back up. You do not have to be currently involved in the state party in order for you to now become involved within the convention process that is going on. Guests are always welcome. It is a great way to just to be able to experience what's going on, to learn how your local party operates, and to see and meet some of the local leaders and national leaders that are running things throughout our entire country. So with that, this is Conservative Salt, and we will